Detroit, birthplace of Motown and the mass automobile production. But here's what they don't tell you about this city. While the auto industry was busy building billion-dollar empires, a handful of black men were quietly building their own empires, and their stories involve NBA benchwarmers turned manufacturing moguls, casino stakes that printed money, and one guy who literally went to prison and still made this list. Let's look at the 15 richest black men from Detroit. And trust me, the name at number 1 will leave you speechless. Number 15. Vinnie Johnson. Let's start with Vincent the Microwave Johnson, an NBA legend from the 80s who didn't make extraordinary money during his playing time. Single-digit millions across his entire career with the Pistons, where he won back-to-back championships in 1989 and 1990, coming off the bench. Most guys with that resume would end up doing car dealership commercials. But Vinnie? He shocked everyone by building a multi-billion-dollar automotive empire. In 1995, 4 years after hanging up his jersey, Johnson founded Piston Automotive in Detroit. The name wasn't just nostalgia. It was strategic branding in a city that bleeds car culture. His play was smart from day one. He didn't try to build cars, but instead focused on sequencing and assembly services for automotive components. Think of it as the behind-the-scenes logistics that keep production lines humming. Just-in-time delivery, component packaging for OEM supply chains, and all that unglamorous stuff that automakers desperately need but don't want to handle themselves. But here's where his story gets absurd. Piston Automotive eventually expanded into Piston Group, a holding structure with multiple operating entities, including joint ventures with Valeo and Lear Corporation. Annual revenues? Try $2 to $3 billion across multiple years. Over 10,000 employees spread across Michigan, Ohio, Missouri, Tennessee, and Mexico. The Big Three, which are GM, Ford, and Stellantis, are all deeply embedded in his supply chain, which means once Johnson's in, he's basically irreplaceable. Switching costs for automakers are astronomical because pulling out a supplier mid-production is like performing surgery on a moving train. Johnson's wealth isn't flashy in a conventional sense. It's illiquid and tied to company valuation rather than Instagram-worthy purchases. He keeps a low profile, lives in affluent Detroit suburbs, has corporate jet access, and sits on boards that actually matter, like the Detroit Economic Club and Automotive Diversity Supplier Councils. He's one of the largest black industrial employers in Michigan, which is a wildly different flex than owning a clothing line or flexing concert money. And the craziest part is that his basketball salary was just a rounding error compared to what he built after stepping off the field. In short, most athletes go broke, but Vinnie went industrial. Number 14. Don Davis. Don Davis did it twice in 2 completely different industries, and almost nobody outside Detroit knows his name. He started as a session guitarist, playing on some of the earliest Motown recordings, including Barrett Strong's "Money, That's What I Want" in 1960. From there, he crossed over to Memphis, becoming a cornerstone producer at Stax Records, fusing the Detroit sound with Southern soul. Johnny Taylor's "Who's Making Love" hit number 1 on the R&B charts in 1968. By 1976, Davis co-wrote and produced Taylor's "Disco Lady," which spent 4 weeks atop the Billboard Hot 100. Over his career, he was behind more than 3,000 recordings. He also acquired Detroit's United Sound Systems recording studio, turning it into a production hub for everyone from George Clinton to David Ruffin. Then came the pivot nobody saw coming. In 1981, Davis quietly accumulated enough shares to take controlling interest in First Independence Bank, the only African-American owned and operated commercial bank in Michigan, and became chairman and CEO. He ran it for over 3 decades. Under his leadership, the institution grew into one of America's top-ranked black-owned banks, recognized by Black Enterprise, with over $200 million in assets by the time of his death in 2014. Grammy-winning producer, owner of a legendary recording studio, chairman of a black-owned bank for 30 years. Davis moved through industries and dominated each one. His widow, Kiko Davis, carried both the bank's majority shareholding and the Don Davis Legacy Foundation forward. The generational wealth mechanics he built kept running after he was gone. Lifestyle was understated. West Bloomfield Township, Detroit cultural circuit presence, quiet civic leadership. That, in this city, is the most respected kind of wealthy. Number 13. Jalen Rose. Jalen Anthony Rose was born January 30th, 1973, right here in Detroit. His father, Jimmy Walker, was the #1 overall NBA pick in 1967. But Jalen grew up without him, raised by his mother on the West Side. That backstory is the engine behind everything that came after. He went to Southwestern High School, where he led the team to 3 state championships alongside future NBA players. That earned him a spot in Michigan's legendary Fab Five. 5 freshmen who walked into the NCAA and made back-to-back championship games in 1992 and 1993. No program had ever opened a season with an all-freshman starting lineup and gone that far. They were cultural icons before they were professionals. Over 13 NBA seasons, Rose earned over $102 million in salary playing for Denver, Indiana, Chicago, Toronto, New York, and Phoenix. But then came the real wealth story. He transitioned into broadcasting at ESPN, where contracts at that level are serious money, and founded 3-Tier Entertainment, a management and production company. He made strategic real estate investments, including a lakefront Michigan estate valued at $2.3 million. And then in 2011, he opened the Jalen Rose Leadership Academy in Northwest Detroit, a tuition-free public charter school serving over 400 students, with a 100% college, trade school, or military acceptance rate every single graduating class. Not 90%, but 100%. Rose's net worth is estimated around $50 million, and lifestyle includes luxury Michigan real estate, frequent courtside NBA presence, and a cultural footprint that spans sports, media, and education. The city shaped him, and he shaped it back. That's the loop that makes this story different from everyone else on this list. Number 12. John A. James. John A. James, Sr. is the definition of invisible wealth. You've never heard of him, but if you've ever driven a car made in Detroit, his trucks probably hauled the parts that built it. James founded James Group International in 1975 as a small trucking operation based in Detroit. He came from a working-class background and entered freight when black operators were frozen out of major contracts. His play was to haul automotive parts between supplier plants and assembly lines. But the real money started coming when he shifted from trucking to logistics infrastructure. JGI expanded into fleet operations, just-in-time delivery, warehouse support, supply chain routing. They weren't just moving boxes, they managed the entire transportation backbone for the Big Three's supplier networks. John's annual revenue touched hundreds of millions. This is a high-volume, low-margin business, so wealth doesn't come from flashy spikes but from stability. Basically, once you're embedded in a production schedule, you become irreplaceable, and if a logistics partner fails, an entire assembly line shuts down. The company ultimately became a family dynasty. John's son, John James Jr., became a national political figure while running the company. Multi-property holdings in affluent Detroit suburbs, executive aviation, regional philanthropy. This is classic industrial wealth, unglamorous, operational, built on contracts that renew year after year. No documentaries about truck routes, but the money's just as real. Number 11. Rodney O'Neill. Rodney O'Neill is the most powerful black executive Detroit's automotive world has ever produced, and most people outside the industry have never heard of him. O'Neill started at the General Motors Institute in Flint in 1971, then earned a master's degree as a Sloan Fellow at Stanford. He spent decades grinding through GM's manufacturing ranks, engineering positions in Ohio, Portugal, and Canada, before becoming the rare executive who survives a corporate bankruptcy and comes out the other side bigger than before. When Delphi, GM's former parts division with 184,000 employees and $29 billion in annual revenue, filed for Chapter 11 in 2005, O'Neill was named President and COO. By 2007, he was CEO. What he did next is one of the greatest operational turnarounds in American industrial history. He cut Delphi's product lines from 119 down to 33, shuttered or sold 45 plants, and systematically repositioned the company away from commodity hardware toward high-margin software and active safety technology. His thesis: in the auto industry, hardware becomes a commodity. Software is where the profits live. He pivoted Delphi toward collision avoidance, fuel injection, and autonomous vehicle sensing years before those terms became buzzwords. By the time he retired in 2015, Delphi's share price had nearly quadrupled since its 2011 IPO. Revenue had climbed back to $17 billion, and the dividend was paying out 3 times more per share than former parent GM. His 2014 total compensation alone, $14.87 million. Named one of Black Enterprise's most powerful Black CEOs, O'Neill was also a board member of Goodyear, Sprint Nextel, and the Michigan Manufacturers Association, and sat on the advisory board of Focus, Hope, a Detroit organization fighting racism and poverty. In 2015, he was inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame. O'Neill didn't just survive the room, he rebuilt it. And he did it so quietly that the city barely noticed. Number 10. Berry Gordy. We all know Berry Gordy, the legendary founder of Motown record label. But let's take an insider look at his story. He was born in 1929 in Detroit's Brewster Douglas housing projects. Before Motown, Gordy worked the Ford assembly line, ran a record store that flopped, and had a boxing career that went nowhere. Standard working-class Detroit grind. Then in 1959, he borrowed $800 from his family and founded Tamla Records out of a house on West Grand Boulevard. That house became Hitsville, USA. Gordy applied Ford's assembly line logic to music. Writers, producers, vocal coaches, and choreographers under one roof. Quality control meetings before every release. Industrialized creativity. The Supremes, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Smokey Robinson, The Temptations, Jackson 5, not just artists, but products of a system designed to dominate global charts. Revenue streams were layered: record sales, touring participation, publishing ownership, artist development deals, licensing. By the 60s and 70s, Motown was one of the most profitable music companies on the planet, the first large-scale Black-owned company to achieve global influence. In 1988, Gordy sold to MCA and Boston Ventures for $61 million, but retained publishing rights and legacy income that kept flowing for decades. Today, his net worth sits around $400 million, which makes you wonder how he turned that $800 loan into a blueprint the entire industry still studies. Number 9. William Pickard. Dr. William Leonard. Pickard is the reason this list has a controversy quota. Born in 1944 in Detroit's Black Bottom neighborhood, he climbed from displacement into serious industrial wealth. Howard University grad, academic credentials, corporate advisory work, and strategic positioning in Detroit's automotive supply chain. He wasn't flashy, he was embedded. Pickard's model was joint ventures and equity participation, positioning in second-tier supplier networks feeding the Big Three, focusing on automotive interiors and component systems. He partnered with established corporations to bypass the structural barriers Black entrepreneurs faced in manufacturing. He built credibility across business, academia, and civic spaces simultaneously, opening doors most people never knew existed. Then there's the casino angle. Detroit's late 90s casino development, Greektown, MGM Grand Detroit, represented one of the city's largest capital redeployments in decades. Pickard was connected to investor circles in that world, though exact stakes remain opaque. But things took a shocking turn in 2003, when he was federally convicted in a large-scale illegal LSD manufacturing case and served approximately 2 decades before release in 2020. Not a white-collar slap on the wrist, but serious time. His story is a cautionary tale about how fast institutional credibility can evaporate. But prior to his arrest, he was widely viewed as a highly connected Black industrial figure with real investment reach. That history doesn't disappear just because the ending was ugly. Number 8. Derek Coleman. Derek Coleman was the #1 overall pick in the 1990 NBA draft, which sounds like a ticket to generational wealth until you remember this was 1990s money, not today's Supermax contract era. He played for the Nets, 76ers, Hornets, and eventually circled back to the Pistons later in his career. His earnings were substantial by that era's standards, but injuries and inconsistency kept him from reaching the financial stratosphere reserved for franchise superstars. What makes Coleman interesting isn't the basketball, it's what happened after. He represents the grounded post-career athlete path, the guy who didn't chase celebrity ventures or blow his money on bad business deals. Instead, he leaned into Detroit's real estate market when it was basically giving property away. We're talking 2000s and early 2010s Detroit, when you could buy entire blocks for the price of a decent car. Coleman invested in residential property, rental housing, and small commercial developments, banking on long-term appreciation as the city slowly recovered. His income structure post-NBA is classic retired athlete stuff. NBA pension system. Benefits that kick in for life, investment returns from holdings made during and after his playing career, and local business interests that stay largely under the radar. He's maintained ties to Detroit through youth mentorship programs, community involvement, and local initiatives, but he's not doing press tours or building flashy brands. Coleman lives in suburban Detroit, keeps a low public profile compared to other former stars, and focuses on family life and community engagement. His wealth path didn't explode, it stabilized. Steady earnings, pension security, and regional investment created a comfortable, sustainable financial foundation without the drama or risk that sinks so many athletes. It's not the sexiest story on this list, but it's probably the most replicable blueprint for anyone coming into sudden money and trying to make it last. Number 7. Brian McKinney. Brian McKinney is what happens when Wall Street meets bulldozers. Before launching his construction empire, he was an assistant vice president at Merrill Lynch, managing portfolios reportedly exceeding $25 million. That finance background is the secret sauce. McKinney approached construction not as a tradesman, but as a capital allocator, which is a completely different game. In 2016, he founded Gayanga Company, a certified minority-owned construction engineering firm named after Gaspar Yanga, the 16th century African resistance leader who founded one of the first free black settlements in the Americas. Bold name for a company about to dominate Detroit's demolition pipeline. Gayanga secured approximately $18.45 million in contracts under Detroit's voter-approved Proposal N initiative, a hundreds of millions public works pipeline for removing abandoned structures, and grabbed a serious chunk of it. Here's the wealth mechanic. Demolition in Detroit isn't just knocking down houses. It's upstream work that enables redevelopment and land banking. Demolition contractors are essentially first movers in gentrification cycles. Gayanga does eco-demolition, underground utility installation, excavation, land grading, and infrastructure prep. Vertical integration that captures multiple revenue layers per project. Green demolition compliance carries premium margins estimated at 15 to 25%, and minority business certifications open access to supplier diversity quotas that cities specifically earmark. McKinney also chairs Journey, a workforce development initiative training Detroiters in tech and skilled trades, and sits on the Detroit Institute of Arts committees. He lives in Palmer Woods, where homes exceed $2 million. Estimated net worth is about $20 million plus, with strong upward trajectory. He turned a Merrill Lynch resume and public infrastructure spending into an empire that's literally reshaping Detroit's physical landscape. Number 6. Eddie Wingate, Sr. Eddie, Uncle Ed, Wingate Sr. operated in a Detroit most people don't talk about anymore. Black bottom in the mid-20th century, when black entrepreneurs were locked out of formal banking and had to build wealth through alternative economies. His primary business, running one of Detroit's most powerful policy wheel networks, an illegal lottery moving serious cash through low-income neighborhoods. The numbers economy worked like this. Thousands of daily wagers, the house taking 10 to 15% per cycle. At peak scale, operations like Wingate's were believed to move millions annually, with some historical accounts placing yearly cash flow in the 8-figure range during his prime. His second asset was the 20 Grand Supper Club and Hotel at 2100 West Warren Avenue, from the 1950s through the 70s, one of Detroit's most iconic venues, hosting national touring acts and functioning as a social hub for entertainers, athletes, and local elites. A legitimate front covering deeper financial activity, classic organized crime playbook. Then, the cultural twist. Wingate financed Rick-Tick Records and Golden World Records in the 1960s. Major Motown competitors before Gordy acquired them in 1968 for approximately $1 million. That transaction included studios, artist contracts, and catalog. In an era of limited employment access, Wingate's network was circulating money into music, nightlife, and community employment in ways that indirectly shaped Detroit's entire cultural economy. He relocated to Florida in 1977 after heightened federal scrutiny. Historical wealth estimates place him at $10 to $20 million in mid-20th century dollars, substantially higher in modern value. Wingate represents a pre-corporate era of black wealth in Detroit. Messy, illegal, but undeniably foundational. And now, we're entering into the top 5 categories, so buckle up and let's dive in. Number 5. Big Sean. Sean Michael Leon Anderson, better known as Big Sean, represents the modern blueprint for music wealth in the streaming era. Born March 25, 1988, on Detroit's West Side, his breakout moment is the stuff of hip-hop legend. In 2005, he freestyled for Kanye West outside a Detroit radio station and impressed him enough to land a Good Music/Def Jam deal. That one moment changed everything. Big Sean's wealth model is layered, not linear. His primary engine, touring and merchandising? Arena tours and festival circuits form the core of his peak earning years, with per-show performance fees reportedly in the high 6 figures during prime cycles. Merch margins in hip-hop tours can hit 40 to 60%, creating a parallel income stream that sometimes rivals ticket revenue. His album Dark Sky Paradise debuted at #1 on Billboard in 2015, and he's maintained consistent charting singles across the 2010s with heavy streaming longevity. Then there's intellectual property. Songwriting credits across his catalog ensure long-term royalty flows, and streaming converted older releases into recurring income assets. Catalog ownership and royalty participation create compounding value over time, which means songs from a decade ago are still generating checks today. Brand partnerships are selective. His Jordan brand association strengthened long-term visibility and endorsement income, but he's avoided mass endorsements in favor of youth culture credibility. Real estate rounds out the portfolio. High-value Los Angeles property transactions function as wealth preservation rather than primary income. He's also positioned himself in emerging lifestyle markets through Don Life branding and selective cannabis-adjacent ventures. Detroit connection is core to his brand equity. He consistently positions the city as central to his music and public identity, performs large-scale hometown shows, and funds education initiatives, scholarships for Detroit students, youth mental health programs, and community resource drives through the Sean Anderson Foundation. That Detroit affiliation isn't cosmetic. It's a strategic brand pillar that strengthens authenticity and feeds long-term fan loyalty. Sean's estimated net worth sits around $40 to $50 million based on touring peaks, catalog earnings, and brand deals. Lifestyle signifiers align with that. High-end LA residence, luxury vehicle collection, including Rolls-Royce tier cars, courtside NBA presence, and international travel tied to sneaker and fashion culture. Number 4. Tom Gores. Tom Gores wasn't born in Detroit. But Detroit is where his story lives, and his wealth is in a completely different tier from everyone else on this list, except the man above him. Born in Nazareth, Israel in 1964, Gores came to Michigan as a child when his family settled in Genesee Township, a small town outside Flint. His first job was stocking shelves at his uncle's grocery store. He graduated from Michigan State University with a degree in construction management in 1986, then worked his way into corporate America before doing the thing that changed everything. In 1995, he founded Platinum Equity in Beverly Hills, a private equity firm built around a simple but ruthless model: acquire underperforming companies, fix them operationally, and compound returns across decades. Platinum Equity now manages approximately $47 billion in assets. Its portfolio has included Ingram Micro, McGraw-Hill, and major consumer brands. 5 of Platinum's 6 long-running funds have landed in the top quartile of industry performers, with internal rates of return in the mid to high 20s, meaning the typical Gores fund nearly triples investor money over its lifetime. That's not luck. That's a system. In 2011, Gores acquired the Detroit Pistons for $325 million, a price Crane's Detroit business called a shocking bargain. By 2024, the Pistons were valued at over $3 billion. That's an 854% return on a single investment. He later bought a 27% stake in the NFL's Los Angeles Chargers in 2024. His net worth, as of the most recent Forbes estimates, sits at approximately $9.4 to $10 billion. Now here's the nuance that belongs in any honest telling of this story. Gores isn't black. He is an Arab-American businessman of Greek and Lebanese descent, raised in Michigan, and deeply embedded in Detroit's civic and economic life for over a decade. He features on this list because his ownership of the Pistons and his investment in Detroit's broader urban infrastructure, including $10 million raised through Flint Now for the water crisis, and sustained support for organizations like the Jalen Rose Leadership Academy, make him one of the most consequential figures in the city's modern economic narrative. If we're telling the full story of wealth that has shaped Detroit's black community, Gores belongs in that conversation, even if he sits outside the racial frame of this list's premise. His lifestyle indicators match billionaire tier, a Holmby Hills mansion in LA, private aviation, high-profile presence at major sporting events. But the real flex is Platinum's track record. He basically built a $10 billion empire from a grocery store shelf in Genesee. Let that sink in. Number 3, Dave Bing. Dave Bing is Detroit royalty, and not just because he's a Hall of Fame point guard. Born in 1943, Bing played in the NBA from 1966 to 1978, spending most of his career as a Detroit Pistons star and scoring leader. He was one of the first NBA players to successfully transition into heavy industry ownership, which is a sentence that sounds boring until you realize how rare and difficult that actually is. In 1980, shortly after retiring from basketball, Bing founded Bing Steel. This wasn't some vanity project or endorsement deal. It was a real operation focused on steel processing and supply during an era when Detroit was still a manufacturing hub. Steel supply tied directly into automotive production, which meant Bing was plugging into the same industrial ecosystem that built the city. Bing Steel specialized in steel slitting, processing, and manufacturing support services, serving automotive manufacturers and industrial clients requiring steel processing. The wealth mechanics here are straightforward but powerful. Long-term supply agreements and steel processing contracts tied to production schedules create stable, recurring revenue. It's low visibility, high stability. The kind of industrial wealth that doesn't make headlines but generates serious cash flow year after year. Bing Steel grew into a respected supplier across Detroit's manufacturing sector, employing local residents and staying economically invested in the city long after his playing career ended. Then, in 2009, Bing got elected mayor of Detroit and served during one of the most difficult financial periods in city history. We're talking pre-bankruptcy crisis years, when Detroit was functionally insolvent and teetering on the edge of total collapse. His mayoral tenure placed him at the center of Detroit's financial restructuring era, navigating brutal budget cuts, city service reductions, and political chaos that would have broken most people. Bing's Detroit legacy is massive. He built a company that employed Detroit residents, stayed economically invested in the city when most people were fleeing, and became a civic leader during a historic turning point. His lifestyle profile includes upper-tier suburban Detroit residents, classic car collecting, and long-standing presence in business and civic leadership circles. He's not billionaire tier, but his combination of athletic excellence, industrial entrepreneurship, and political leadership during crisis makes him one of the city's most important sports-to-business success stories. Bing didn't just make money in Detroit. He helped hold the city together when it was falling apart. Number 2. Isaiah Thomas. If Dave Bing is Detroit royalty, then Isaiah Lord Thomas II is the king who built the whole court. Born in Chicago in 1961, Thomas was drafted second overall by the Detroit Pistons in 1981 and spent the next 13 seasons becoming one of the most ferocious, ice-cold clutch performers the NBA had ever seen. 2 championships, 1989 and 1990. Finals MVP in 1990, averaging 27.7 points per game on the biggest stage. 11 All-Star selections. He didn't just win for Detroit, he defined an entire era. The money was modest by today's standards. Thomas's peak salary was around $2.9 million a year, a fraction of what a player of his caliber would command in the modern NBA. But what he did with what he had and what he built afterward is the real story. Post-retirement, Thomas moved into coaching, business, and broadcasting. His estimated net worth today sits around $100 million, built through a combination of broadcasting income, equity investments, and his most recent pivot, a genuine swing into sustainable materials and public markets. Thomas became chairman and CEO of One World Products, a hemp-based construction materials company, positioning it as a supplier to the automotive and food packaging industries that built Detroit. His stated goal is to become the first NBA player to take a company to the NASDAQ. And with hemp-based composites increasingly replacing traditional concrete in packaging and building applications, the market timing might actually be right. But what anchors Thomas to this list and to this city isn't just the business activity, it's the philosophy driving it. He talks openly about watching wealthy families pass stock to their children every holiday, compounding value across generations, and wanting to build that same engine for Black families who've historically been locked out of capital markets. Every business decision gets filtered through the memory of where he came from. Thomas remains one of the most recognizable names in Detroit's sports and business ecosystem, a living link between the Bad Boys dynasty and the city's future. Number 1. Magic Johnson. And here we are, the crown jewel. Irvin Magic Johnson Jr., born in 1959 in Lansing, Michigan, represents the most successful post-athletic business transformation in history. His net worth sits somewhere between $1.2 and $1.5 billion. And here's the kicker. Almost none of it came from basketball salary or endorsements. Magic didn't get rich playing basketball. He got rich buying things. Magic's wealth system is equity first. During his NBA career from 1979 to 1996, he built brand power and trust with corporate America, but the real money machine launched after. In the 1990s, Magic Johnson Enterprises started investing in underserved urban markets, movie theaters, Starbucks franchise partnerships, retail centers in minority neighborhoods. The insight was simple but powerful. Urban communities were underserved but economically viable, and corporations were willing to partner with someone who understood those markets. Magic proved you could make serious money serving communities that Wall Street had written off. Then came Phase 2, institutional investment and equity. Magic shifted from franchise ownership to large-scale investment funds and ownership stakes. He's part of the Los Angeles Dodgers ownership group, owns the LA Sparks in the WNBA, joined the Washington Commanders ownership group, and has real estate development funds plus infrastructure and insurance sector investments. This stage moved him from millionaire to billionaire status because ownership stakes in major sports franchises appreciate faster than almost any other asset class. The wealth mechanics are pure. Ownership stakes rather than endorsement checks, private equity participation in large deals, real estate funds targeting long-term appreciation, and revenue participation across sports franchises. His returns came from asset appreciation, not short-term cash payouts. Magic leveraged fame to gain entry into ownership circles, then gradually replaced celebrity income with investment income. The key principle that defines his model: ownership beats endorsement, equity beats salary, long-term assets beat short-term cash. While Magic is globally associated with Los Angeles, his Michigan roots tie him symbolically to Detroit's economic narrative and Black business empowerment model. His broader work in urban redevelopment and minority-focused investment influenced similar strategies used in Detroit revitalization efforts. He's maintained philanthropic engagement across Michigan through the Magic Johnson Foundation, health awareness campaigns, and youth and education programs. His lifestyle indicators match billionaire tier, including multiple luxury properties including Beverly Hills estates, private jet travel, high visibility presence at major sporting events, and formal presence in major corporate and philanthropic galas. But the real flex isn't the houses or jets. It's the blueprint. Magic Johnson proved that athletes don't have to stay athletes. They can become owners, investors, and power brokers if they're willing to play the long game and prioritize equity over everything else.